Hey folks, welcome back to another episode of the Texas SignalCast. I'm your host, Joe Desotel, and I'm here with my co-host, Jessica Montoya-Coggins. Hello, Jessica.
Hey, Joe.
Well, let's see. We got a few things to talk about this week. I think the headline is a very sad one that we saw coming this whole year based on SB 8 and the abortion ban out of Texas. But another law, this one out of Mississippi, has made its way essentially up the courts, and looks like the Supreme Court is hearing this, and there have been some initial indications about how they might rule.
Yeah, that is true. So I listened to most of the oral arguments as much as I could sort of handle. I did have to
Sure.
kind of just
Yeah.
go for a run at some point. But by all indication, it does appear that Roe v. Wade is in danger. And I mean, that's a case that actually stemmed from North Texas. The Wade was the district attorney here, and it was a case that sort of formed that legal precedent that now looks to be in jeopardy. And remember, Abbott's actually already signed legislation. It's basically called a trigger law that, if Roe v. Wade is overturned, abortion will just be outright banned in Texas, even more so than what happened with Senate Bill 8 and sort of that 6-week ban and then the vigilante stuff. So yeah, I think for a lot of folks, this is something that we've warned people about, and it's here.
Yeah. Yeah, it's unfortunate, and these types of what you call trigger laws that you mentioned are really been popular as states have really pushed the boundaries on trying to ban abortion at earlier and earlier stages. This has been a very popular kind of conservative policy, position that they've been pushing. So I recently saw, because of all this, a map of the United States and what abortion access would look like if this were to be, upheld, the Mississippi rule, and it will in fact change and kick in that rule in a number of states. Of course, as you imagine, throughout the heartland of America in the South, particularly, and there are only a couple of states that seem to have, like Oregon, basically abortion as a constitutional right that's protected at the state level. And so, quite the opposite of Texas and some of these others. But that's a long way to travel if someone does, in fact, have to travel from Texas.
Yeah, and I mean, we at Texas Signal, we talked with an abortion provider, Dr. Gazala Moyetti, and she also operates out of Oklahoma, and she'll see patients, that have to travel there, and that's not easy. That is something that's not possible for many poor women. And there's also becoming a backlog. So scheduling in like places like New Mexico or Colorado, that window is limited there. So this is it's very scary, and it very much impacts healthcare too. When we're talking about this, and it's for me, it's very infuriating to see, because I saw a bunch of Texas Republicans like crowing about this yesterday, and I'm like, you do not support paid family leave. You are not in favor of expanding Medicaid. We have the highest childhood poverty rate in the country, and what are y'all doing? You're not pro-family. You're pro-birth.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And that's, I think, something that we really need to talk more about in the framing of this issue, because we've let them get away with saying that they're pro-life so much. And I do remember when Wendy Davis ran after making her stand. I mean, what made her famous, literally a national figure, was standing against a different type of abortion ban back in 2014, maybe even 2013 at the time when she did that. And she, in her subsequent run for governor, she floated sort of trial balloon out there, reframing the idea of what it means to be pro-life as someone who takes care of children after they're actually born and makes sure that they are able to surround them with the type of resources that they need to grow up healthy and smart and be the contributing member of society that conservatives want us all to be. But that didn't last very long. But I personally was happy to see it, but I think it's going to take I just feel like we're very entrenched in sort of the narratives that we have, and but we need to start thinking differently and communicating differently about it, because it's just not true. It's like you said, it's just simply not true, and we got to stop giving them, a pass on being able to say that, and particularly when we see them cheering on people like, Ryan Rittenhouse and all these other people as heroes. I mean, these are tragedies, no matter which way you look at it, and yet they, in some ways, find ways to make heroes out of some of these people, and so we're really seeing, in general, Republicans push back on anything that seems like expanding or giving Americans access to healthcare. And it's sort of on a different topic. We have Ted Cruz, who's right now threatening to shut down the federal government over mask mandates. And so, again, something else that can help protect and keep Texans and Americans safe, and allow our government, our economy to open back up and go full steam ahead again. And they are standing in the way of that all over this sort of nonsense.
Mhm. And then it's also with the vaccine mandate too. A number of those federal
That's right.
provisions are supposed to kick in, and because we have sort of this patchwork
Mhm.
judgeships, and many of them are like these really crazy Republicans that were nominated by Trump. There's been sort of like a back and forth. You mentioned the mask mandate. Actually, the Fifth Circuit, they superseded against another federal judge. So now Abbott has actually banned, school mask mandates. But, with a vaccine, and by the way, Ted Cruz is fully vaccinated. Like,
Right,
he was
right.
probably first in line. Let's not mince words there. But it's very crazy. And, I was just reading, I get these reports from county hospitals, and, in Amarillo right now, their chief medical person is kind of sounding the alarm. It sounds like their hospital is starting to get to that threshold when some things have to start happening, and you have to sort of like reshuffle wards and things. And this is 95% unvaccinated patients that are coming in, and they're sick, and some of them are young too, in their 30s or 40s. But this is exactly what we've seen. We know that I keep wanting to call it Omarion, but the
Omicron.
Omicron.
Yeah, I want to say
Omicron.
Omicron,
Omicron.
and
What is
it's
it? Yeah,
Omicron. Yeah,
that thing.
it's a Greek
I just
letter.
called it Decepticon or something.
Yeah, I
You
think
know,
I think it's funny you say that. I think it's Transformers too. Every time I hear it,
yeah,
Omicron, it sounds like a bad guy in a
yeah,
Michael Bay Transformer film or
yeah,
something.
yeah. So that's here, and it's probably circulated, I think, wider than we think. But these vaccines are sort of how we get back to normal. And Ted Cruz and Chip Roy, they're sort of like the people that are threatening to defund the government, which is, he's done it before, I guess. So maybe we'll
Right.
see if there's
Yeah.
an encore.
Yes. Yes. Believe him. And, like they say, when people tell you who they are, believe them.
I mean,
Um,
this is also a guy who got into a fight with Big Bird. So
I
this,
mean, yeah.
what else more? What else can you say?
They say pick your fights. I don't know if he's ever heard that advice, but so Ted Cruz, of course, isn't the only one who, this is part of, again, the national conservative narrative against vaccines and basically anything professional healthcare workers are trying to get us to do. But Abbott himself is also, celebrating that he had a recent win in court over the last couple of days that essentially stayed a ruling that I mean, it's one of those things where it gets confusing because it's like back and forth, back and forth. But the crux of the situation is that the courts essentially, at least temporarily, upheld his ban on vaccine mandates and mask mandates in schools.
Mhm.
And I'm not sure if that's extended to other places of business as well, because he's also had he's had executive orders that do all those things. So I don't know if you know the details of this one, but
Yeah, it's kind of a patchwork right
mhm,
now. Interestingly, the judge that initially overruled, or stopped the injunction against the mask mandates was actually a Bush appointee. But that Fifth Circuit is so conservative and just scuttled that. But yes, for right now, businesses cannot require the vaccination. Now that can change at a dime's notice. But and also for the federal contractors, I believe that does start in January. And again, this gets very confusing at some
Mhm.
point.
But the
It's just
bottom line is, yeah, it's a political narrative that they're pushing. It's not about the health, of Texans or anything like that. And so the news now, the scuttle out of the Capitol is that there are several Republicans are in general, their caucus, who want another special session to make it a law. So it's no longer an issue that's in the courts going back and forth and whether to enforce his executive order, but that they actually want another special session just specifically so they can say no vaccine mandates for this
right.
virus.
Right. Yeah, I think it's about 25 we're up to 25 Republicans that have
Mhm.
called on this. So that it looks like that could potentially happen. And it's just very sad. I mean, over 73,000 Texans have died from COVID-19. You would think that, that's a really high number. You would think that that would give people pause, but I guess not.
Yeah, I mean, no kidding. And we've talked about this before, but Abbott, and the way he's doing this with constantly going back and not, for unfinished business when he has basically everyone, every branch and every part of the legislature and every statewide office is all Republican, and yet they still can't get the work done. And this is supposed to be a part-time legislature by design, and the conservatives apparently love less government, but they've already come back 3 times. And we've seen the effect of that. We've seen one of the highest rates of retirement that we've ever seen in the legislature. We have over 25 House members not coming back of 150. And then we have at least 5 senators out of 31 who are not coming back. And this is just going to be a huge turnover. And so, all the people who you want in government, and not saying you want all these folks in government, but there are some good folks who are retiring. But a lot of people, I'm seeing other announcements by folks who I thought were good leaders, even if they were more conservative, just saying, no, I'm not filing for election. I'm not filing for higher office, because it's being left to just the crazies at this point. And
Right.
and if you want to go there and you're just like good government, conservative or liberal or whatever, there's no place for you there. And it's just gotten worse and worse. And it's not even the right or popular thing to do, is what we're seeing from the polls. And so they're just banking that the voters out there in the Republican primary will still drive the overall final results of the November election. And there was just a poll that was just taken over the last 10 days. It was a Spectrum News poll, and it showed that Beto O'Rourke is, I mean, this is the first time we've seen this. So, you got to take polls like preferably in an aggregate. But this is showing Beto O'Rourke 31% versus Greg Abbott 26% on the question of who most shares your values.
Hmm.
And that's all Republicans talk about is values. But then when they do things that really are the exact opposite of expressing those values, like what you mentioned earlier about calling themselves pro-life, that's a value. But then the things that they're doing show that they are not in fact pro-life, whether it's with healthcare, abortion access, vaccines, or any of the education system, if they say they care about children. But the polls are continuing to look very poor for Greg Abbott. On favorability, Greg Abbott 44%, Beto also 44%. But Governor's Abbott approval and disapproval, which has been very consistent over many polls in the past year, disapproval at 54%. And that has been pretty consistent, with an approval of 45%. So you never want to be under 50% as an incumbent, as a general rule. And you certainly don't want your negatives over 50%.
Mhm. Well, I mean, this legislative session, it was very brutal and it is out of step with the way majority of Texans think. What even on abortion, gun, passing permitless carry. I just literally, not even 5 minutes from where I live, there was a shooting this afternoon. It was a road rage incident. And that's like something that like I literally am fearful of every time I drive, because now that you have people that are emboldened to have firearms, and I'm hearing that from other people too. And I've mentioned my best friend was thinking of moving to Texas, and um, she just she just, in addition to the abortion ban, she just the idea of guns here, she just was like, I can't do it. And I don't blame her. So but a lot of these things are unpopular, and but this is what Abbott and Republicans did. They had this super right-wing agenda that they rammed through, and here you are.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Um, and and so much of this, unfortunately, is just a distraction from what folks really actually care about. And this is all in the line and vein of creating problems and then trying to pretend that you're going to solve them. But there is a real problem that lies ahead, and it's called winter. And in Texas,
Interesting.
yeah, and in the past year, we've had some issues there. So, ERCOT is basically telling us, and other professionals out there, that we really, they can't guarantee that the lights will stay on. Of course, Greg Abbott has guaranteed himself that the lights will stay on. But other professionals in the field say not so fast.
Well, I'm not surprised that Greg Abbott thinks he can tell any woman what to do, even if that woman is Mother Nature. But yeah, I mean, even for myself, like I was kind of doing some just cleaning around the house, and I was like, all right, let me make sure I've got my flashlights. Let me make sure I've got the batteries for the flashlights. Oh, let me go find that weighted blanket that I used during the last winter storm, like gathering my like stuff, like, all right, just in case, my little like prep kit here.
Yeah,
Making sure we've got a lot of like canned goods. It's like that's not normal. We should not be doing that in the quote unquote power center of the country. Sort of making these contingency arrangements for the power to go out. But that's what I mean. That's what a lot of Texans were doing, and that was an incredibly traumatizing time. Hundreds died. There was billions upon billions of dollars of damage. Even our coworkers. I remember Ben. He was telling us, he's our graphics and social media person. He has a younger brothers. They had a dog. They were frightened when they didn't have power for days. And it was very scary, and that was the experience for
yeah.
many people. And so when you do hear like we can't guarantee that the lights are going to stay on, that scares the dickens
Yeah,
out of you.
exactly. And there's going to be, there's sort of a mini run on generators, and there'll probably be again, as people start to prepare and they start to hear this, folks just basically having to go off the grid in the middle of a city, because they're afraid, that the basic infrastructure, and then the top growing state and one of the, like, basically the 10th biggest economy in the world is not solid and not strong, and can't stand up to inclement weather. And so I think that I think we're going to continue to see that come up a lot. And I think Beto himself will be using that over and over again, and I certainly hope that's the case for Democrats across the state, because this is something that truly affected just about everyone, and certainly someone you knew.
Mhm.
Well, with that, I think we'll continue to keep tabs on all this. Is there anything else that you wanted to throw out before the?
I know. I feel like I'm trying to like think if there's any good news. I know we always like to end with
Oh
positive,
yeah,
but
yeah,
it
yeah,
was just like this week was very brutal. I'm not gonna
yeah.
lie. Listening to the Supreme Court case, I was just like very, very upsetting, and
Yeah,
it sort
yeah,
of created a dent in the week. But it is the holidays, so people are at least in there's some little cheers out there.
yeah. No, I agree. I just set up our Christmas tree, and we decorated it yesterday and got it all lit up, and so we're definitely starting to feel the spirit now. We're safely past Thanksgiving, so I feel like it's totally appropriate. And yeah,
You can listen to Mariah Carey, no
yes.
problem now.
You know what? Ironically, I have not heard that one yet. Thank goodness, because I'm sure I'll hear plenty between now and then.
Yeah.
But yeah, well. holiday cheers to everyone. Hope you do get to spend some quality time with your family and minimal time arguing about politics. And so, and talking about how you're going to get prepared this winter, and then who you're going to support, I guess, to make sure that we keep the lights on moving forward. But
That reminds me of the SNL skit with, I think, Matthew McConaughey, who I guess is not running for governor. So that's good. That's good news. But they're like the family's all arguing, and then Adele comes on, and they all just like stop because everyone loves Adele. So you can go now. There's a new Adele album too. So
there you go. Yeah, absolutely. I saw her performance with Oprah on the I guess Oprah sponsored the performance there in LA. It was on TV. It was pretty good. Even as somebody who had never really listened to Adele, I could appreciate, talent anyway.
It's a good sweater. It's a good sweater weather album.
There you go. I love sweater weather. I mean, of course, we're in December and it's almost 80 degrees outside, but
same here too. It's like 78.
Yeah. So I wear my sweater inside with the AC blasting. But anyways, so well, thanks everyone for listening once again. Find our coverage at texassignal.com. We'll continue to track new entrants into the primary race, which I believe the filing deadline is December 13th, so coming up pretty soon. But certainly a few more surprises will come up, I imagine, and we will be here to share it with you. Follow us on Twitter. We're constantly sharing breaking news and insulting Greg Abbott there. So we love for you to join us there as well. And of course, if you would like to become a patron member, we certainly would appreciate it at our website, texassignal.com. You can figure out how to do that at the top right of the corner, and essentially helps to fund the progressive journalism that we're doing here in Texas, which is so very much needed. And so until next time, later, y'all.
Bye, guys.